veterans are reporting to their respective teams coming up tomorrow. You can hit us up at the hashtag Giants Chat on Twitter. He is at Jay Fiegels. I am at Giants WFAN. Or, of course, you can dial us up at 973-667-1960. 973-667-1960. Now, a couple of quick news items before we get to the phone calls. Jeff, we know that on Friday, ESPN reported that the Giants had agreed to terms with free agent veteran kicker Chandler Catanzaro, a guy who had in the past kicked for Arizona, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and, of course, in MetLife Stadium with the New York Jets. The agreement was reported to be contingent upon Catanzaro passing a physical. He would wind up taking the spot of Aldrick Rosas, we would believe. He, of course, has had some off-the-field issues, and the Giants, needing to rectify that situation, apparently have found an answer.
Apparently. I mean, listen, the guy comes out of retirement. I mean, I remember last year in preseason, he missed 2 extra points, went into Adam Gase's office and said, that's it. I stink. I'm gone. I'm retiring. And he sat out the season. So I think what you're seeing here, Paul, because of what's going on with COVID and all this reporting and when the season's going to start and evaluations, not going to be a lot of time to evaluate a kicker in training camp. Not going to give him those four games. If you were going to, you release Aldrick, and then you got to have a young guy come in here. He's going to have 4 games to prove himself. But so what do? You go get a veteran. And I think that's probably what this is, a veteran that actually has kicked in MetLife Stadium, which makes a lot of sense. Obviously, they talked the guy into coming back, or he was ready to come back, and this is a perfect fit when you think about it. And if you look at the numbers, the guy's pretty good over the last four years that he played in the National Football League.
29 years old. As you said, he was retired last year, but let's go back a little bit, and as we look at his numbers, we find out that he's 10 of 16 in field goals of 50 yards or longer and hit a career-long 60-yarder with Arizona back in 2016, and in the year he was with the Jets. And I think that's important because we all know that there are some athletes who cannot handle the spotlight of New York. In the 1 year he was with the Jets in 2017, he was 25 of 30 with a long of 57.
Those are good numbers. Those numbers right there will keep you in the league a long time. I'd love to sit here and talk to him about what happened and went through his mind after he retired. I mean, obviously the guy's only 29 years old. He's still got a good career ahead of him, but I mean, listen, 10 of 16, outside of 50. So that tells me right there, he's got a great leg. And obviously, it's had a lot of rest. So, listen, it's unfortunate what happened to Aldrick. Obviously, if he was here to tell you, I'm sure he would be like, if I had to do all over again, I would, think twice. But the fact of the matter is that the kicking position, as you know, Paul, over the years that you've covered the NFL and the years that I've been in it, it's the one position that can be replaced pretty quickly. There's a lot of guys that can go out there, but and there's a lot of good ones. So this is the case right now. They're just going to have to go out. They found their guy. And, it's interesting because reading on the internet and kind of coming across all these stories that are coming out these days is that about workouts. You just can't go and have a free agent kicking workout anymore because there are no workouts. So you got to kind of rely on what you've seen in the past. And I think that's what you're getting here. It's experience. A guy that's been in MetLife. And like I said, the guy's been in the league a while.
Well, let's make something clear. As we are doing this show live at 12 noon on Monday, no roster move has been made involving either Catanzaro because he has yet to pass his physical, and no roster move has been made regarding Aldrick Rosas, despite some of the reports from NFL Network suggesting that he would be released. At this moment, nothing has happened. Now, let's assume for just a second, though, hypothetically speaking, that this transaction, this two-way transaction does take place. You mentioned it's a very unique offseason, Jeff. We know that most times teams have 2 kickers during summer camp because they don't want to see their lead guy get burned out. And quite honestly, they also like to see some competition, and they like to see the lead guy at least get pushed a little bit. Do you expect that if Catanzaro is the one kicker on the Giants roster this week, that at some point very soon they would bring in a second leg?
Well, the situation right now is, remember, you have Joe Judge, who's been a special teams coach for a long time. So he's going to have a unique idea of what to do here because he's the head coach. You never want to give a guy a job. I mean, obviously Daniel Jones is the quarterback, right? But you got tons of guys behind him that are going to compete. But in the real world, it's his job. The kicking position, same thing. You really kind of want to pressure these guys and create competition because not only is it's really good. It's really good for the team. It's good for the position. I loved competition. I loved having guys in camp. I knew that they couldn't beat me out, but I wanted to compete against them just like I like to compete in anything that I do. So that was fun. I encouraged it. And there were guys that came in with stronger legs, but, where it counts is the games. But if you bring a young guy in, Paul, how are you going to evaluate him in games when he hasn't been there? There are none. So to answer your question, I think they will, but I think they may be very selective and go the other way and say, you know what, we're just not going to have a young guy in here because we know what Chandler can do if that's indeed the guy that they do sign, and go from there. Plus, the 80-man roster. I mean, if you want to, it was at 90, and if the guys they're going to cut 10 guys and get to 80 at some point in time, you're going to want to have other guys in the positions, defensive line, offensive linemen, things like that. So having another kicker in camp just takes another roster spot.
Okay, Jeff, well, let's get to that particular issue as well as some of the other NFL headlines that have occurred over the course of the past 3 days. My, oh my, it was a busy weekend for the league.
Yeah, sure was.
Now, Pro Football Talk does a great job of summarizing these things, so I'm going to go to their site and give you some of the lead items that we have learned. They're reporting that the NFL Players Association told their players that there will be no preseason games, as we've suspected now for quite a while. Most players won't be in full pads for the first time until August the 17th. And for 30 of the teams, camp starts tomorrow on July the 28th. We already know the Chiefs and Texans. They play 3 days before that first Sunday of the regular season, so they've already started their camp because they got a couple of days dispensation to go early. Okay, so that is the schedule as we know it, at least in generic terms. There are a lot of individual things about some certain days and what you can do and what you can't do on certain days on the field. But that much has been established. Now, one of the other things that has been established, according to Pro Football Talk, is that the players' behavior, and this is kind of raising another eyebrow because of what's happened to the Miami Marlins in baseball, where they've now got 14 players testing positive. They've been forced to cancel a game tonight. The Phillies and Yankees game also canceled because the Phillies and Marlins played yesterday. So what we have now is a situation where apparently the league and the labor union have agreed that the league is going to be allowed to set certain social parameters on the players, and they'll be allowed to actually fine them, apparently, if some of these players don't follow social rules when they are away from the facility. And as a side note to that, what I wanted to ask you, particularly because you played in the league for so long, how important is it not only for those players to get the guidelines that they need from the players union and, of course, from the coaches and the medical people, but how important is it for the veterans to try to help self-police the other guys on their team?
Well, that's a whole mouthful right there. And then you got to understand, any of this protocol or rules that are established are collectively bargained from the NFLPA and the NFL. So these are agreeable. So the players union is saying, yes, we agree with you to emphasize these rules. Okay. Now I will tell you this. A lot of times people think it's the younger players. A lot of times it's not the younger players. It's the older players. Okay. So be careful what you say when it says you have to police the younger guys, because that's not always the case. So my point is that it collectively, the whole team needs to be on the same page and not just think it's just the younger guys. Now, I read all those rules, and I'm a rule follower. I would follow the rules. I have no problems with it, but I'm not, one of 53 guys that are the same way. So there is going to be guys that do not adhere to that. And here's the problem with it. You are going to start understanding that if you are going to take a chance in getting COVID, and have a chance of bringing it in the locker room or doing things like that, there's a chance that, like the Miami Marlins, what's happening with that team? You infect the whole. I mean, before you know it, you're not going to be able to feel the team to play, and then if you don't play, you don't get paid. And that's when the veterans and the guys that know about their money, they get serious. Don't cost me any of my money. And so it always comes down to money. So it's a very fine line. But police the locker room, yes, you got to understand. And this is a unique situation where if you're asked to do these things, just please do it. Just really do it. But there's going to be guys, Paul, that don't. And there's going to be guys that maybe there's going to be guys that do this and they still contract it somehow. You don't know. So just because a guy goes and I mean, he might even go to the grocery store or whatever. I can't remember the whole rules, but it's bound to happen. Someone's going to come and test positive by saying, you know what, I've done everything I can in these rules, and I still got it. So it's hard to understand. But I will tell you, Paul, it's not always the young guys. But the older guys need to police the young guys too, just because they don't know what they're doing. They're young and stupid. That's what it is.
Now, Jeff, a couple of moments ago, you had mentioned about the roster limits, and I do want to mention this one item, or follow up, I should say, before we get to our phone calls, because there was another item that came out. Brandon Crystal of KOA Radio in Denver first reported this, and then Pro Football Talk followed up. A memo was distributed Friday to all teams, as we understand it, that they can cut to 80 players before July 28th, that's tomorrow, or they can wait until August the 16th, which is a day before the players are supposed to get in uniform and hit the practice field. Now, according to the memo, teams that can wait up until to reduce to their 80-man limit must utilize split squad practices, with one group mainly consisting of rookies, first-year players, and any quarterbacks or injured players who were part of that group. And once those designations are made, you can't go into Group B. The B group will consist of all veteran players who report on July 28th. Again, that is Tuesday. That is tomorrow. Now, a team that chooses the split squad approach, and we talked about this, I believe, last week on BBKL. Wouldn't it be great to try to do some type of dry runs as to the game day experience by using split squads, so to speak? Well, any team that chooses the split squad approach can reduce their roster to 80 from 90 at any time before August 16th and then merge the teams together. So this is another, I don't want to say a strategic move that teams must decide on their own, but they certainly have to figure out how they want to handle their players.
Yeah, I guess the split squad means, a little bit more work for trainers and equipment managers and guys like that, but with workouts, right? I mean, you're gonna go on the field at 10, and the other squad's gonna go on at 1 or something like that. I don't know, Paul. I think it's maybe from evaluation purposes that these other 10 guys are, they're sticking around because they want to get a good look at them. But what are they getting a good look at? August 16th is the date. I think August 17th is when you start putting the pads on and you can start hitting and practicing, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I feel like we talked about this the other day, and I said, I think it was Friday we mentioned it when John was on the show, is that those other 10 guys normally, those probably they were going to get cut most likely anyways. You got to get down to the roster limit anyways. I don't know. I just think it makes things a lot easier if it's me just to get down to the 80 and be done with it and not have to worry about 10 extra guys around the facility that may have a chance to, spread the disease.
But Jeff, if you do want to
disease,
do
it's not a disease.
The virus, right? The virus.
Excuse me.
But if you do want to do some intra-squad scrimmages, you're going to have to go to 90. I think you got to keep with the 90 because once
the inter-squad scrimmage would be what? There's no pads on. You have a helmet, right? I mean, they're not going to be in pads until the middle of August.
Yeah, till the 17th, right?
So, but that's when they have to be down to 80.
And guys, I don't want to jump in, but
hey, John.
Hi, guys. I'm Schmuck, by the way. The earliest you can have even unpadded practices is August 14th. So you can't even do unpadded practices before then, as far as I can tell.
So there you go.
They got a lot of things. There are a lot of things to consider here. There really are. And, I just feel one thing, and I'm not trying to be a downer here, but what we just saw happen with baseball this morning, again, I said this the other day on our program, and I'm not going to back away from it. Everything is fluid, and everything can change on a moment's notice. I refuse to think that anything is in cement these days.
Mm-hmm.
Too much can happen, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too much can happen. Too much can happen.
And it's happening on every level of sports, period. Whether it's baseball, basketball, football, college, pro, it's all there. And it's fluid. It's daily. And I mean it's daily. I'm not going to get into it, but, my son at Rutgers, it's daily. There's things that, if not daily, it's hourly. There are things that are changing, really.